Hi, this is Huili Wang. Welcome to Cloud Access Security Broker CASB Fundamentals. In the last video, we talked about CASB visibility function. In this video, we'll start to study the other key function of CASB, the control function. We start with data protection. The first part of this video, we'll be talking about the static part of the control of data protection, that is the definition and classification of the data. And in the second part of the video, we'll be covering the action part, the control enforcement. We have seen this chart before. If you still remember when we discussed the shared responsibility between cloud service provider and cloud customers, this chart illustrates the part that falls into cloud customers' responsibility, the data protection. So data for many businesses is the primary asset. And the data breach has been the top one security concern for 2 consecutive years in cloud computing, according to CSA, Cloud Security Alliance. So having data well protected is the fundamental part of CASB control solution. To keep your data under control, you must first know your data, know what data you have, the types of data, the different criticality, sensitivity, and the different level of control you expected on each type of data. So these are basically the static part of DLP, data loss prevention control, definition and classification. Here we have 4 pillars to cover what we just mentioned. The first one is security categorization, that basically defines what types of data, like confidential data, proprietary data, or compliance related like PCI, DSS, or PII. And then you will have the definition of conditions. So when these conditions are met, you can call that a confidential data. And with these two, you can apply or link the categorization to your existing data by the discovery and classification process. When that is done, there will be policy. Defined policy is a bunch of rules to basically define how you should handle each type of the data, what would be the required control to apply to that. We'll come to the details in the following slides for each of the pillars here. Categorization and definition are the basis for DLP control solution, and it must ensure an extensive coverage and an appropriate level of granularity. Here, NIST gave us a suggestion of a function and information type definition and the process to come up with a security categorization. It is used for public sectors in government, but it also can be a reference for business use. One thing to note that the categorization process should be business-driven and involve all function areas, not by IT alone. In fact, the process should be technology agnostic because the level of difficulty to implement or the convenience of a technology to implement the data loss prevention should not distracting the decision of categorization. For example, you cannot try to shoehorn the existing schema to make categorization align with your existing schema. That should be the other way around. On the condition definition part, surely the current mainstream commercial solutions already have definition elements built in place. There could be thousands of schemas there. So that's a good starting point to use them as a template to break down and customize to your own business use. Once you have the categorization and conditions defined, then the next step is to discover all your data and classify them, label them with the categorization. And this, the challenge here is, number one, how to find all your data. And because some data are actually in motion, not just stored somewhere. And the other is how to discern the content and apply the corresponding and appropriate label here. We have a bunch of tools to serve that purpose. And this list of tools are content oriented. For example, keyword, that's the most straightforward. If you have a keyword like confidential in the document, and most likely that content applies is corresponding to the confidential data. And dictionary are the list of entries. For example, the most commonly used bank names or the most commonly used area codes that are used, that are in place, just like a dictionary, for you to look up. The length and format is a very important, very commonly used criteria to define and to detect the data. For example, some pattern, if like 9 digits, can be recognized as a social security number, or some digits with like a credit number. A regular expression will be used to fine-tune the classification and provide more flexibility. For example, if say you have meet these pattern, and at the same time there's some bank name in place there, and the reputation reach a certain threshold, and in that case, that's going to be taken as maybe it's a document of a confidential customer information data and should be treated to the corresponding level of control. In addition to the simple content-based tools, there could be other discovery methods to discover and classify the data. For example, the metadata, that's the data about data, and you can get contextual parameter from here. Application, it depends on what application was used to generate the data, and this can give some special type indication. And protocol, whether the data was transmitted from web or FTP. And signature is also very widely used for critical data. For a document, for example, you feed the entire document to a hash algorithm, and then the result will be a short clip of alphanumeric strings, the data. So that's called the signature. That is used to recognize the content if it happens to be critical content. Fingerprinting is very, very similar, close to signature, but as an extended usage of signature. So if for signature alone, the whole document, you only have one signature, and suppose you are going to transfer only part of the content out, and the signature doesn't match, so you would not discover and recognize that, you wouldn't classify this as confidential, for example, and that will result into a partial leakage of a part of the content. So fingerprinting will be able to avoid that. So instead of feeding the entire document into the hash algorithm, you chop it down into several blocks, and for each block you get the corresponding signature, and that way you will not be able to lose just a part of a critical document. In this video, we have covered the data definition and classification. Mainly purpose is to know your data. And in the next video, we'll move on to talk about how to put action to protect your data. Thank you and goodbye.